and not just his job. And you got to experience him in the final years of his work. Did you get to experience him after he stopped working, and was he different from when he was still producing gowns?
Well, you know, he stopped very recently. It's been just 3 seasons, I think. And you can imagine what it's like after 50 years, 4 collections a year, some really more if you count cruise and bridge lines and things like that. I was very worried about him in a certain way. What would he do? And, you know, it's hard to cry for Valentino with the chateau and the yacht and the plane, and the pipes in the plane, and the waiters and the 1600, the painting the lawn and everything. But he seems to be holding up relatively well. I haven't seen much of a difference. He's still, you know, Valentino's a movie star in a certain way. We found that when we started watching the dailies. And we thought, you know, I didn't want to shoot him talking to the camera because, frankly, you know, at the worst, he's extremely boring. And, you know, at best, he says the same thing over and over again. Like many famous people, he has his story, and he tells it. So for me, that was not where we were going to go. If you saw Lagerfeld Confidential, the whole movie is Karl Lagerfeld talking to the camera, and he's wonderful. You know, he's so funny. That's what he does. Valentino doesn't do that. Valentino leaves the house every morning as this incredible creation, Valentino. He's movie star ready, really. So when we watch the dailies, you see this sort of inner movie star light, and when you see him in action, you kind of can't take your eyes off him, actually.
Hi. First off, I wanted to say that it is really an amazing achievement. It's a remarkable film. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the challenges you might have faced in terms of control and accessibility. I was struck a couple of times by how they were trying to sort of maneuver things to off camera and take things off the record. And
yeah.
How much of a challenge was that for you?
Unspeakable. They're control freaks. This doesn't cover it. I mean, they're really, really control freaks. And Giametti his job is sort of being a director-producer. So he was sort of directing and producing over my shoulder, or attempting to. But I didn't try to stop him because that's what he does. And I thought it was kind of amusing to see him. And then at the end, and I'll get to the control freak anecdotes in a minute, but at the end, when we found out this party was about to happen, I thought, okay, well, I'm in search of a third act. Now we found it. But then he began to become Guido from 8½, for me, because he's sort of looking like Mastroianni. I figured out where their hairdos come from also. If you look at Mastroianni in that La Dolce Vita clip, they're doing that vent comb thing from the early 60s. And he began to remind me a bit of Guido, and the Temple of Venus thing began to remind me of the rocket ship set, outside of Rome, and he's starting to kind of, their lives started to be sort of wrapped around these construction sites, and I found that kind of incredible, and he's directing, so I was really enjoying that. And then one of my favorite moments in all movies is the end of 8½, when all the characters from Guido's life proceed down these stairs, and you have that Nino Rota score, and this sort of started to happen organically as well. Everyone from Valentino's life converged on Rome, and there were all these processions of them. So there was something incredible, Fellini live moment happening there. Now, anecdotes. They did not like this movie when they first saw it. I showed it to them I flew with a director's cut to London and showed it to them in a screening room double this size, with about 5 people in it, and Giametti, Valentino, and some of the entourage, and 2 of my people. At the end, I think they looked like they had just been through electroshock therapy. They had a kind of cuckoo's nest look in their face, but they didn't really complain. And Giametti's one comment was, all I can say is very artistic. I think he added, and very modern. And then they left. And then they called me from the back of the Bentley, and I had to hold the phone out here. And they were screaming, it was like, Mr. Valentino does not do this movie. never mind the movie was finished, and I had, by contract, the directors, I had the final cut on the film. We then had about a 4-month psychotherapy session that was global, because I would be like summoned to the boat, you know, given like latitude and longitude coordinates to show up. They called the movie The Pizza because they thought it was like it's like bring the pizza to between Ischia and Capri. So I would show up with the pizza, and we would show it to them, and Giancarlo would sit there with what I swear was like a Snoopy notepad and a pencil and start taking notes. And we then would have these meetings, these sort of like, I don't even know, they were sort of like, you know, rap sessions where, mafia style, basically, where they would complain about literally every scene in the movie as having something objectionable to it. And I just dug my heels in. I can't even, I mean, some of the scenarios they were coming up with were incredible. Giancarlo was offering to move to New York for 6 months and recut the movie with me, because I'm very good at this, you know. And Valentino would walk out of the screenings. He once did it full on Our Apache's Meltdown, recreated in the screening room about 2 blocks from here, and walked out with Giancarlo, you know, looking at me. He's like, "What have you done?" And finally, the turning point was the Venice Film Festival, when we got in, first of all, and they, being Italian, they knew what that meant. And they showed up on the red carpet. They were still a bit tense, and then it got, in a room, the Sala Grande, with 1,600 people, it got a standing ovation. And Valentino was seated in a balcony in the back, and the crowd rose and turned to him, and then he rose and did a side of Mussolini and burst into tears. And then they embraced it.